Hello everyone. Today's talk is perhaps one of the most exciting topics for me. And the title of this talk is Mankind is its own greatest technology. So I like talking about technology, but not just like physical technologies. The fact that there are consciousness technologies in the manner that you apply yourself as existence to existence. So what that means is that we are a self-aware being, and we have just been placed at this very fantastic table of creation where we can have experiences as a creator. I cannot be this whole universe, for example, as I am an individual, but my individuality, I can go, for example, break an atom and be like, whoa, that's cool. It all leads to emptiness. So it's very important to see that in cultivating an ability in confronting reality, the users of technology will change. So what that means is mankind right now is acknowledging value in external reality, so the technologies are not going that internal. What are internal technologies? And so this is simply ways where you become aware of yourself. And for now, it's kind of like, let's say, meditation or things that you do to calm yourself. That's a technology. It's a certain tech. It's a certain approach in which you are applying yourself to how you're being approached. It's a very interesting thing. So now to take this back to technology, I've always thought about spacecraft, for example, not too much though, because it wasn't that real for me. But the fact that if we are in a multidimensional reality, what does an external technology mean? So does that mean that if it's all through a holistic sense of being, that chair is just information, or it's just how I'm placing this projection in front of me, or is how I'm observing this a placement on its own? So you see, there are unknown aspects which right now the pilots of consciousness need to begin engineering by, in a sense, deconstruction of everything that's constructed. So it's as if that person was the true artist who he took away all his ideas and just from a completely new moment just burst something out, I found moments of my own greatest, let's say, not greatest, but just the paintings I've done. Sometimes I do them without even thinking. I don't even know what I'm drawing until the end. But as it completes, it's as if the knowing through the whole art process was just an awareness. It's as if I was spiraling into a collective knowing, which at the end knew its individuality. So what that means is that our technologies are right now working with what is here physically. Now, after a certain amount of physical confrontation, we see that after, managing the same information, the same habits, we want to change the habits. So the human mind is now reaching a point where, do you see how many people, for example, get tattoos, get piercing, get ways in which they are constantly going through a new experience by changing externality. So the consciousness technologies is in a sense, or how when I say mankind is its own greatest technology, I'm simply implying that we have had an ability to utilize external information and come up with the technologies now we have. What is that missing link that will connect mind and body in the sense that our technologies become self-aware? Artificial intelligence must develop through us becoming more transcendent beings in giving that permission. It's as if, regardless of how many people think that robots are going to take over the world, it cannot be present in that way, because you will see the natural movements of life can in a hurricane wash off the greatest labs. Your reality you're responsible for your reality in many ways. In some ways, when you choose to be a character, whether it's in your story or in others, you have taken the acceptance of that reality and you've chosen to be that responsible character. That is why you see the servant does not have that many wants of trying to become a master of its reality. It's just like, all right, I'm just fine with what it is. But it doesn't mean it's a servant. It's just simply showing that one aspect is choosing this relationship, but why is there not an ability to see other relationships? For example, when you see some guy who is right beside, let's say, a convenience store, and he wants to buy something, but he's not getting up, you see that all you can say is just like, why are you not being extremely direct with your reality as if you are the creator of your world? Because on some aspect of your own awareness you are. In your self-awareness, you realize take a responsibility for everything that you're seeing. It's not that you're just responsible for other human beings. It's not that you're just responsible for animals. It's not that you're just responsible for every physical form. You are also responsible in how you are aware of yourself here. And so that awareness needs to be clear. And so how much has the concept of clarity resonated with you? And is clarity an act or is it an awareness? Do you need to go to a teacher to be aware of something? Or can you just be aware of it by just looking a bit more deeply? You will see, if you become sensitive to your life, all those things which you thought you needed help in, you never did. Because you will become aware of the ability that is able to manage it. You know, it's that when they made the sword, man also had an ability to use it, and that's why it was used. So the technologies that we have now, it's as if we're using. We no longer have swords in our hands, but we have iPhones. We have social platforms where we're constantly connecting these shapes to other shapes, and so we're embedding people's lives with an information system that has artificial qualities. But we are not bothered because we understand that regardless of how much we think we have artificial intelligence, it's all one existential intelligence. In other words, when you see how the cosmos is thinking, you're not bothered by the ideas of man. You become compassionate to them, actually. It's as if on some level of being aware of yourself, at least let me bring this to me. In certain ways in which I have been aware of myself, I have experienced suddenly very blissful states as if like I am in absolute bliss, like there's literally no, it's as if my awareness to the shape of the problem has just dissipated. But sometimes there's an awareness where it's as if I also go into moments where suddenly there's and I know it's not mine, it's just a flow of just what's coming, you know, and just how the moment manifests itself. But it's like in that moment I suddenly get very sad, but it's not a sadness that's here. It's as if it's sad in being able so much in seeing how much, for example, a condition can be more vibrant. It's like that moment where you see your friend has a greater potential than how he's displaying himself, you know, and you take an act to communicate that. That's when you're a friend, for example, you know. That's when you're friendly to life, in which you're not lying to them. You're actually trying to give them the clearest information. Because if you lived as if today was your last day, you would not hide things. You would not keep that secret, you know, you'd say it, you know. Because it's the last day. Because your significance of what you are right now is kept by your ideas on space of time. And if you simply become aware of the actuality of the experiencer that is keeping the object of experience there, you will become aware beyond your ideology, in the sense that your knowing was always beyond. So what that means is, like, that moment where you realize you're not that video game character, it's because you knew. And so scientists, or science, in its very mighty approach, and it is mighty in how it has served us, but is realizing that it's as if the video game character can never understand how it's the person sitting on the couch. So science will see that it is in the lack of limitation that it gives people, and the awareness of those people to that lack of limitation, where there's an inspiration for someone to move beyond who they thought they were or they were not. It's as if that moment that regardless of how much I try to hold on to things, I try to find the perfect watch, or even the perfect beads, as some people just go and try to become a perfect actor in a way where they think they're not an actor, but they're still acting, you know. Regardless of how I have existed so far, I must have the ability, as a moment of existence, to not even exist. In the sense that the clarity of this being is that we think our movies, or we think it's really cool to see in movies, let's say an explosion happened and people die or something, like, you know, regardless if it's in the cinema or in the news, you see that in actuality, what is that Superman type of thing was that being who had lived such an aware life, where he had not just contributed to every moment of his existence with his full attention, but when the time came for him to transition from his physicality, he looked at the whole world and went on a bench, sat down, closed his eyes, and dissolved into every beautiful image he had received. And just through that, through the ability of his joy, transitioned. rather than just a burst of spontaneous push into an unknown. Anyways, regardless of the intensity of reality, there is a playfulness quality too. Because sometimes in life you see some things taken away from you, but at times you also see some things you have. It's like that moment where you thought you did not have happiness and you needed to pay and fund many self-help books which weren't helping the forest. But were helping, for example, whatever their intention was. You will see that it is the responsibility of you to wake yourself up if it's real for you that it's sleeping. If it's not, live your life as you are, and life will provide you with the experience that you need, because, you know, as Eckhart Tolle said, it's the experience you're having right now. So you don't need to get into very complex moments where you're trying to analyze thought, but thought is transparent to you, so you don't know the origin of your awareness even though you're aware. So when that moment comes, you realize it's not that it's like, for example, many people think it's just like science's law or regulation or whatever. Knowledge is not wrong. Knowledge is like the branches of a tree, but you need to be aware of the whole thing, you know? So knowledge is actually very significant. How am I talking? It's based on words, knowledge, things that people have contributed to, and that structures that have developed to now walk beside me to then for me to, in a sense, very playfully on structure. It's as if certain people do not just emanate their light to physical forms, but to ideas. It's as if that being who was so compassionate realized that he was not stressed, because regardless if a bad idea came, if an image of him being incapable came, he was so compassionate and he let that image pass, just as he had let, for example, images of his joyful self pass. You know, you are a continuity that is as natural as the existential allowance that a tree has. I found a tree to be very fascinating because, for example, you see, for example, in thermodynamics, the air is considered to be a fluid. So see it as if that the tree is never outside or inside. You know, it's as if it's never it's present in two different soils. It's as if trees were what was bridging two different densities of physical reality together, you know? And so they were an intelligence present. So when we realize, like, wow, human beings are not just complex thinkers, they're so complex that their existence is multidimensional the minute they choose to see it, because you will always move past the dimension you observe. Right now, I've set this talk. That reality is gone, now another reality. The next word I'm saying, the next word I'm saying. But you will see, again, as also I've said, some of the greatest abilities of advanced communicators or very self-aware beings is also in how they are aware through the silence and stillness. So also keep that in mind. Because the mind does not play games with itself. It's when the mind is trying to play with objective reality, where it's trying to change its externality, where it can't realize its internality. The minute you stop trying to do something, you feel more clear. You literally feel more grounded. But the minute you suddenly begin allowing reality to be stressful to you in the way that it presents itself, you know, it's as if you don't have good guests right now. You know, if your home was this moment of experience, if you're stressed and depressed, these are just guests. These are just imagery, you know. If you choose to term the abstractions of your mind as depression or stress, you better have really observed your existence. You better really know directly what's going on, in the sense that you for example, not just have observed your whole memory in the sense by just being present, but also, for example, being aware of all the different branches and methods in which self-awareness can be obtained. It's like that moment when I discovered, for example, the Upanishads. For me, it completed certain things and saved time, you know? You're never figuring something out because there's always something else to figure out, you know? So there's an illusion that we're creating for ourselves, and sometimes this illusion gets heavy and we don't like it, so we must have the ability to calm our mind, you know? And so, again, whether the introduction of the methodology that you use comes from ancient traditions or how you receive the present moment. In other words, you're not doing any ceremony other than your life. It's just every movement of you is like an ecstatic dance into how your awareness is present as everything is. Mankind is its own greatest technology in the sense that in this self-communication, that is this holographic projection, that is this reality, it's like we've created the dynamic where there's a user and then there's the actual technology. However, as we become more self-aware, our need for having external technology shifts because our state of being is aware. It's as if, as a vertical view is found, the horizontal dimensions are never the same. And so your unknown is simply suggesting how this is what you're aware of right now as your life is just how the painting looks like right now, but the canvas is, you know, is much bigger, and you're still drawing in new realities, you know, new senses of perception and new senses of just empty awareness. Just an awareness to that aspect of you that's just breathing. Make life the greatest technology that you will use as a moment of existence, as a moment of experience to really observe all that you can see. Realize that all those people who perhaps were killing one another, hating one another, bullying one another, were not aware of the magnitude of this existence. You know, it's as if everybody becomes an explorer when they suddenly realize, you know, there was something there that wasn't there before. Everybody. There is no longer, you know, a need for apocalypse, a need for some form of repetitive ideology to feel complete. It becomes as if that your awareness to how vast you are will create a sense of unknown that is saying that I cannot judge that person as who he is and hate him because we are such vast beings. It's as if our intelligence is not just like that, you know? So think of it this way, that everything that you have done so far has just been what you have done. It doesn't have meaning, there's no guilt, they're just actions, they're just forms and fluctuations in imagery and in physical, just in reality, in what you're calling physical reality. And now begin to see that you can also let it be just action. You can just choose not to interpret action, just acknowledging it as action, you know? And all this is to bring forth your presence, my friend. Your presence is the voice of your honesty because it silences the dishonest. It's that point where you saw that yogi did not need to say a single word and everybody understood him because he was a new energetic presence. It's as if he was not just there putting new ideas in his head and new facts. He went through a process of existential alchemy where his state of being, the type of human being he was so dissolved in an absolute experience of everything beyond any duality that could even create an illusion. People knew that his eyes were empty and there was nobody there, and that is why that being was free. And so the seers of thought, those very mighty beings, if you think about it now, especially, you know, from where we are, who just landed down this technology in the sense of books, for example, you will see they have just created catalysts for you. All physical reality it's a catalyst for itself. Your understanding before is a catalyst for your understanding now, which is a catalyst to your understanding before. Simultaneous reality gives you an understanding that you have a very advanced mind, because your mind is not bound by space and time. So in an instant, if I suddenly choose to do something I've never done before, to talk about things I've never talked about before, I can, because that platform of allowed formless presence gives me the greatest maintenance of my form. Because it's a self-maintenance. It just happens by itself, just as your heart is. It's as if how much you fail, your heart keeps beating. It's as if, your heart is on track. Your heart is listening to your whole body, and it's flowing. It's keeping your whole body. So similarly, you don't need to freak out or to, in a sense, create a world where there are freaks in that world. Nothing is freaky, nothing is scary. If we choose to create individual realities where we don't want to confront, our mind will be split up, and so we will always be lost as an idea who has forgot to look at itself. So your immediate solution to many things is your awareness to how manifestation is manifest as it is. That moment in your life where you realize you never had to work, but in a sense you were always working, is that moment where you have not just become an efficient human being, as if like your ideology is not important. If someone just saw you as a human being, they'd be like, wow, this is just such ability in regards to how that being is allowing himself, how you are allowing yourself to work with your reality. That you will see there's no trouble with authority, guys. Authority is bad only if you recognize that you are not part of that authority. It's only in your sense of thinking that you are something that your absence or your participation becomes tragic. And at times you think it's in one dimension of your experience you're not, for example, aware of the minds of all men. But in certain aspects of your experience, how could one mind of man be different? How could your awareness as a human being be not on the same wavelength as the experience of humanity? So I noticed that because there's globalization, because that for example, my family reached a point where I was traveling into other countries and I could see how other human beings are living. In that observance, your technology became, the greatest technology became the self-awareness to the clearest act or the clearest expression. I'm sure that we can lead as evolved users of technology, as beings that in a minute through their self-remembrance activate their collective sense of consciousness, in the sense that they are no longer requiring ideas, but they're aware of all perception, image, sound, taste. It's as if they're in this ecstatic moment of just experiencing all that their moment is, And so those beings, those users of technology, will change the demand of technology to a point that it is not supplied externally, but internally. It's as if that moment that we as human beings suddenly realize that our existential intelligence has the potential to make us just, not just how we, like for example, you see like how the food you eat is giving you a certain energy. How you eat the food is really how important it is. Because you could eat only, let's say, parts of the food, or you might not eat, you know what I mean? So how you receive an image and how you interpret that is your energy, is your life source. So you will see that you will become pure life source when you have observed that you are not the only form, and so all forms have become your body. It's that moment where you embraced life because you saw every form that you were aware of was alive. No worries, man. By the way, guys, I'm in the park and someone just kicked the soccer ball towards me, football towards me, and I guess I just heard an apology. Randomly, I just heard, I'm sorry. Anyways, we want to say that regardless of how sorry we feel, and regardless of how our politeness keeps us in imagery that is limiting us, the ability of a human being is in how much they allow themselves to prosper. There's great love here. How much, I see that I was conditioned to be or have certain preferences. At the end of it, it's like, it's too much of an infinite spectrum. It's too beautiful to just have one way of seeing beauty, It's as if we assumed that all ideology ever, whether it came through a religious extension or where it was a scientific, extraction, it's very important to see that the observer of the guilty man was never guilty, and the unshaped never needed the shape. And so human psychology is a changing moment of an awareness to form, and forms which you're calling thoughts. It's very important we get so involved in life with a sense of our natural rhythms of clarity, and to accept roles in environments where nothing's being done. So because we have a culture and society, for example, some of those sages in the mountains realize that they must come back and to assume roles until there is a certain level of self-awareness, And what that means is that when you see that kids are fighting in a playground, you go and you stop them from fighting, but then after you have stopped them, you also tell them, hey, don't fight. Why are you fighting, You choose temporal imagery, and your satisfaction will not be found because you think you're in confusion. Do not create imagery for confusion, because confusion is not just a one-dimensional sense of clarity. Even though we think that there's only 4 dimensions, for example, as some have thought, there's more. That's just one way of looking at things, What that means is that science was the inspiration of one man looking at an apple in a certain way. Do you know how many people can look at an apple and just get crazy views on how reality can be conceived? And so, it's the efficiency in how real you are aware of the illusion, and how real you are aware of the illusion never being there, in which your presence is the answer. So when someone says the presence is the answer, he's simply implying that the greatest contribution you can have to life is just your self-awareness into creating an able and a very, in a sense, compassionate and clear view. Because after every speech that I do, guys, it begins at first with me not knowing what I'm talking about, but being exciting about the exploration. But as the exploration finishes, I also see that it's like a brush, and it's like when I speak, I am painting something for the audience, but I gotta put the brush down. And in life, in actuality, it's similar. In the sense that, the tools that we use on some level become this reality. As if that this reality was a tool for a greater design. And that means our authenticity is our allowance to work within all that is working. And I think that's really, truly, existentially what it means to work for yourself. It's more than just a website, you know, or a blog to do at home. But regardless, our playfulness is our tolerance and is our joy. And in me allowing others to thrive, that's actually how I thrive. Because a part of me is a very deep association with my environment. So it's like that moment where you realize it doesn't matter if you're the one, for example, let's say suddenly suffering a loss or crying, or it's someone else close to you suffering, or it's someone around the world which you don't know. The fact that that imagery bothers you means that you're a self-aware being, that in a moment of transcendental vision, you have just seen that your approach is the solution, not the movement of the tool. It's like how you use the tool is the solution, not just the tool, you know? So sometimes you'll see in the way you want to use a tool, you'll pick up a tool and it's not perfect, so the person puts down the tool and in a sense uses another tool. And suddenly he sees, all right, so the first layering of thought and belief and conditioning I was given, this first tool, it's not satisfying. So let me go see what others have said. And so you're searching for knowledge here, you're becoming that guy who wants to read more. And so as you go and search, you're like, okay, let me see what this means. You know, let me see how this order of this chaotic existence is shaped. You will suddenly see that in many frames, your picture could be put on the wall. In some manner, you are the being that is allowing yourself, and in some manner, you're also that being who is not allowed, which is in some manner allowing that being who is the one being allowed. So it's that your totality is in seeing that you're not just an individual being, you're a changing process, which is just its own natural intelligence, you know. I could try to create a theory on how every drop in the Niagara Falls is falling, but it's unnecessary because I can just sit back and enjoy it from a much more pleasant view. And so Paul Dirac really saw the beauty in formula. He said that whatever it is, whatever theory that we find to explain it all, then let it be a beautiful one. Because if it's not beautiful, that means it is losing its humanity. It's as if scientists for a second forgot that in thinking too objectively, they were allowing the object to also get involved, you know? So it's very important for you, for example, like let's say if I was an inventor and if I wanted to, let's say suddenly one morning after my pure coffee, I just decided to create artificial intelligence, just to create a life form, a mechanical life form. I would see that I would take myself to nature because I don't want to think in boxes. So you would see that the imagery in your environment is part of your thinking. So it's very important that you be in nature and let nature do the thinking for you. So what that means is your thoughts will be more pleasant because that stream in the water was never late for work. Or the sound of, you know, how a bird has no plan of knowing how to find that worm, but it's just its life force that really gives it its success. Your success is a side effect of your ability to acknowledge life directly as like a total, as a real experience, you know. Video games are fun because on some level you are having as an experience of there as like this experiencer. It's like it's kind of meditative actually, video games, because at one point you're sitting still on the couch, but you're so focused on the game that it's moving, you know. But it's actually an interesting view. Video games could be enhancing one's mind in profound ways. But again, that awareness that you are not the person in the game means that you are throughout this life giving yourself certain ability of detachment, and at the same time also attaching yourself to some things, you know. So that's why a transcendental intelligence is that moment where the coin was neither heads or tails, it was both. Do you see that? It's as if because it's simultaneous, one side cannot see it. But if our intelligence resonates with an awareness in being so compassionate, so graceful in observing physical change, external change, our internal dimensions will absorb the illusion of the external into a moment of all-knowingness. And so that is when the prophets were never prophets, but human beings who had reached a state of ability where they were their existential plane. They were the plane. So you will see that a human being as a self-awareness can reach a point where it becomes this box. It can be the box. So you would see, for example, and I'm using these ideas very respectfully, these words, that the Prophet Muhammad, in God's name, I heard that there was a story, and of course, you go, if you're interested in the Quran or in Holy Scripture or in holy passages, it's your passage. You've chosen to go in that reality, and so I have no comment on that. You know, I'm not here to debate on origin stories. I'm simply here to say that in one origin story in the Quran, the Prophet Muhammad is said to be this man who, when they poison him, when they put poison in his food, right before he eats it, for example, the food, out of its love for him, shouts out and says, "Don't eat me." It's as if this being was so self-aware existentially that external reality became his allowance. And that is a being who has reached the point where the whole thing that everyone is calling real has become not a toy, but an object of an infinite observer. And so that is why Prophet Muhammad was the messenger, in my view, because his message was that your nature is transcendental and the direction and the source of this transcendence is one. And so regardless of what symbology you use, move past that symbol and become the experience of your greatest totality. And so you will see that regardless if we have the story of Prophet Muhammad in God's name, or the story of, for example, Guru Padmasambhava, who was also a being who could move the physical dimension, as he was an awareness of it. For example, of course, guys, these are playful imagery I'm talking about in regards to the experience of Guru Padmasambhava, but he was a being who was aware. And his awareness allowed him to be an expression beyond physicality. It's as if like I'm present here right now, and my expression as consciousness is not just the movement of my body. It's like I'm realizing, oh wow, the wave, as Alan Watts was saying, was the movement of the whole ocean. So you are the intelligence of the whole ocean. So the Prophet was clearly heard when his followers dissolved into the direct experience of the purity of existence, as is beautifully presented in the imagery of that origin story, that origin sense of truth. Because stories are not just stories when you get involved to them, that you are seeing your own eyes in that carrying those character and the setting. You know, we are involved with a sense of not knowing and with a sense of knowing, and this sense of knowing has gotten refined with its, in a sense, explosion into the unknown, with its sense of search and investigation of what it has kept. It's like sometimes you feel something heavy, but you don't know what you're holding. And so when you let go of it, when you let go of everything, you suddenly see, wait a minute. It's as if that weight was gone, so it's like you were never holding something. I mean, think about this dimension of thinking that if you were to hold right now a huge book, a very heavy book in your hand, the minute you let go of it, after the book was on the ground, you would see that it would be a different experience. It's as if when you held the book, if you didn't have an awareness of your hands, you would just be this heavy presence. But if you did have an awareness of your hands, you would see how you would exist as formless presence, beyond just what you think you are. We've given too much significance to ideology, and mankind now is just growing out of it. It's like language has been a toy. Now our consciousness wants to evolve in new experiences, and so direct experiences become more important. It's like there's a reason perhaps many of our youth are driven towards psychedelic experiences to simply see more than what they're seeing, because that's exciting for them. When you see excitement is where your intentions are coming from, the story and the way the story has to be doesn't become, is not that important. It's like you see the wisdom in, if you can't beat them, join them. In the sense that if you cannot maintain an individuality that is peaceful, don't constantly think that you're somebody. Don't constantly think that you're a boss when you're just another human being among human beings. Have the humility of acknowledging your existence as it is. And so it is sometimes the being who lets go of that book that will suddenly feel the emptiness of his hands, and that is a much more significant experience. Because you guys, it's like this is the relationship. When we are born, when we are not manifest and suddenly we come into manifestation, it's as if we are not carrying a torch of remembrance. And the being who, in a sense, passes away being self-aware to the last minute of decomposition, where he's hearing the most beautiful symphony that's ever composed of life's fluctuations, and his awareness of duality, he is seeing that there is no need to be something, because before you chose to be something, you were it. You were all of it. So mankind grows up, acknowledges them, it gets itself, it gets utilized, picks up the technology of individual self-awareness, and constantly kind of walks throughout this life. And at the end of it, where he has everything's being let go of, and it's not like he's letting go. It's as if like his body is just like, all right, I'm getting tired. I'm so tired that today I'm just gonna transition. So you will see that you can have an awareness of something from nothing into nothing, but it's very important that you cultivate that awareness of how real nothing is in your sense of being something. So guys, not to confuse you, if you're a physical being here, if you're an individual being, before you pass away, it is a wise idea to really observe what collective means, what collective consciousness means. What does unity mean for you? What does integration mean? What does your intelligence being more than it is mean? Are you stupid because you're not aware of your infinite potential? Or are you stupid because you're accepting only one potential of you and imagery that you're just saying that's you? Because when I'm talking to whoever's listening, I don't know you, I'm not talking to you, I am talking to the being who thinks a story can tell it all. No, you are an experiencer, and the knowing of the experiencer is beyond how much the object thinks it's an object. We are multidimensional beings because that's why we have deep questions. It's just the depth of our question takes us to the edge of our this plane of existence, and we realize the pilot of consciousness was the originator of all flight, because he was the limitless sky. Do you see how thoughts integrate to have never been there? Because they're aware of a greater presence that is existentially being. So what that means is, like, when you're sitting in your house, in your living room, and you're just enjoying that moment, when you're sitting, let's say, on your porch, or you're sitting by a stream, or you've climbed a mountain, you're sitting, you don't need someone to come there and say, hey man, are you enjoying this? If you're not enjoying this, and if you can't communicate properly, then enjoy this, and if you can't use these scientific principles and laws to communicate exactly how you enjoy this, I'm not going to believe that you're enjoying this. You'll be like, okay man, I don't care. You just detach. You'd be like, I don't care how much you can interpret or you can explain something. My enjoyment and joy of my own experience is its own thing. My habits are new. For example, that kid that people were calling strange, no, he's not strange, he's just the newest type of human being, and that's what he's doing. Do you see? It is an inferior mind that condemns novelty by masking it with a sense of one part of the spectrum. It's like all those people who were limiting others by telling them that you were my slave, your servant, you're nothing, you're and saying nothing as if like devaluing their image. If you hate and if you hurt, it's as if you've used your two hands to
play with dirt when you could have actually, through an awareness of the tree and different branches of knowledge and tolerance and compassion, picked up a fruit and had a great experience. You know, it's not that you are not realized, you are not enlightened. The light is always there. It's in your eyes. That's how you see. It's just that how you're aware of what is here is not really here because you're too lost in a sense of a thinker. When you try to find the thinker, your awareness of the present moment decreases. So that moment where the quantum theorist, physicist was just suddenly just lost in its theory and seeing God, could it be possible in this way? You know, you would see that possibility is all about how much you know yourself in a moment of experience. That mass communicator knows himself beyond the self, and that is why he is the self of self. He is empty and he is fulfilled. And so that is why a compassionate being is always an emanation, similar to how Tibetan tradition says that, for example, the Karmapa is an emanation, you know, of the other Karmapa. You will see that these men are holy because they are not aware of just their form. They are aware of life through a much more real, holistic sense of being. It's like that moment where you saw that amazing martial artist and you did not have that skill, but just the way how Bruce Lee hit his hand was so real for you that you were just like, I will know martial arts at some point in this lifetime. And so you would see that your own playfulness and ability to follow your longing will show you all that you belong to. Mankind is its own greatest technology because he will see that he is also the ability beyond the need for external satisfaction. It is consciousness that realized that humanity has been its technology. Do you recognize this? It is consciousness that will recognize itself as the technology. So you're no longer waiting for something, you are that expression. You are emanating your greater knowing. Your individuality is always emanating your collective presence. And as you become aware of it, through your own acceptance of the transparency of how your conditioning and your history has, in a sense, become potential in simultaneous ways. You were never the ideas that were ideal or were not ideal enough. You were the idea who let the stream be the stream, who let what is here be here, and saw that if you never had spoken, you'd still know what you're doing on this road. Be comfortable with yourself and realize that that comfort comes in you confronting your totality. Trust me, there's some aspects of you go into certain, let's say, states of self-contemplation, deep self-contemplation, you will see that it's as if you were like, could I be this chaotic? It's as if you begin seeing aspects of yourself that are just blending with what was chaotic for you. And so you as an observer of all your experience, observe different ways how, for example, suddenly this part of the river, there's more of an intense rush than that part of the river. And so you're seeing some parts of how you're alive, you have the ability to conceive yourself as being totally a sinner. And some parts of you has an ability to completely conceive yourself as a saint. And also a part of you has an ability to dissolve. And so in that sense of transcendental alchemy, be the knowing beyond space and time. and always know that you are beyond your vehicle. Everything in this reality is a vehicle in your awareness. It is something creating a relationship, and so you are always driving with a knowing beyond the vehicle. It's as if you know that you're sitting inside that car and you're not the car. So do not suddenly also be lost in the mechanical aspects of technology, in a sense not allowing your humanity to be present. And in sincerity, take your steps into humanity's greatest steps. Much blessings and namaste.